Depending on who you're talking to, John Wall may be the best passer in the NBA today, and he is the perfect guy to start off this video where hopefully every single player mentioned is not a point guard, although the majority of them will be, as you would expect. But right on cue, we have Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors, a power forward whose vision and passing IQ are just completely out of whack, and he's the perfect pick-and-roll partner with a guy like Steph Curry. And with so many great shooters around him, it's really not fair, the abilities that Draymond has. Portland Trailblazers, Damian Lillard, who is one of the most exciting offensive players in the NBA today. He may not be otherworldly with his playmaking, but when you combine it with his scoring abilities, I mean, he's one of the best players in the NBA for a reason. Ricky Rubio struggled out of the gate for the T-Wolves, but, unfortunately, a Zach LaVine injury actually led to him having the ball more. We don't like injuries, but we do have to give Rubio credit where it's due, and the passing has been pretty legit for the T-Wolves throughout the second half of the season. Russell Westbrook is not a surprise, given his double-digit assists, and given the guys around him and how little shooting he has at times on the floor with him. It's really impressive, the assist totals that he puts up. Eric Bledsoe, who still remains one of those players in the league who we don't really know how good he is because he's either been a backup for Chris Paul or he's been on a Phoenix Suns team that hasn't been that good outside of like one season. Who knows where his career will eventually go. The San Antonio Spurs move the ball around beautifully, so typically not one guy is going to average a crap ton of assists. We still have to give this one to Tony Parker because he just fits in that offense so well. We did just hear about the injury. He'll be out for the rest of the playoffs. Get well soon, Tony. Now, James Harden, his passing was, I don't want to say a revelation because he already averaged 7.5 assists before this season, but he just went to another level. The workload he can take on offense, it's just mind-boggling, really. We head to Kyle Lowry of the Toronto Raptors. He kills it when the starting lineup is in the game, but he's also led second units that a lot of NBA teams, as well as coaches, were not prepared for. They're currently down 0-2 to the Cavaliers. They have some work to do going back to Toronto. And for the Detroit Pistons, we have Ish Smith. Reggie Jackson may be a more talented player than Ish, but we saw that Smith's ability to be a playmaker and not a shoot-first option was the better fit for the Pistons, and maybe he'll be the starting point guard there moving forward. Drew Holiday of the New Orleans Pelicans, who they really need to re-sign because if they don't have him, then DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis are going to be making up for a lot of middling talent along the perimeter, but if they have a legitimate two-way point guard in Drew, that'll make their days quite a bit easier. Jeff Teague of the Indiana Pacers, I think he got some criticisms throughout the season for, I don't know, they traded for him. George Hill may have had the better year. Teague was silently improving as the season went along, and while Indiana never completely figured it out, I think he got more comfortable within their offense. Nikola Jokic, who should make the Nuggets a top 10 offense in the NBA for his entire career with his passing ability. As long as they have some decent shooting around him, their offensive rating has already been very high the past 30 games or so. Jeremy Lin of the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, the Nets were actually 4-5 when he was starting at point guard, and then he got injured, and then it tanked, and he came back, and they were actually kind of okay again. He's just a not bad point guard who's going to average 14 points and 6 assists. It's okay. Now we have JJ Barea. He, as well as Yogi Ferrell, played about the same amount of games, but Barea averaged more assists while playing not as many minutes. And it's funny how he is so good in Rick Carlisle's offense and not that good anywhere else. Elfrid Payton, he's a weird player in today's NBA because he's not going to kill you with his athleticism. He's also not going to kill you with his jump shot. So it's tough to say where he really is besides a backup. But he is still a gifted playmaker and someone who could average 7+ assists if you really catered the entire offense to him. And now for the Lakers, I think you could go one of two ways here. I would probably still go with D'Angelo Russell, but at the power forward position, Julius Randle made a lot of strides this season with his passing, getting to over 3 assists a game. He could be the Lakers' version of Draymond Green moving forward. Derrick Rose, I think he kind of wins this one by default. He only averaged like 4.5 assists for the Knicks, which is not good for a point guard, but they didn't really have anybody else on the roster. I mean, Brandon Jennings, but he's not there anymore. Would have worked, but I don't know. Congrats, Derek. For the Kings, we're going to give this one to Ty Lawson. Even though I like Darren Collison more as a player, I can't mistake that Lawson was pretty legit as a backup point guard, sometimes starting for them this season. I don't know if he can ever be a starter again just because his jumper just seems to have not been there as much, but I mean, he could still be pretty good. George Hill. Now, the Jazz move the ball around quite a bit. It's funny that they don't have anyone who's over 4 assists a game, or over 5 assists, I should say. I guess we'll give this to George Hill. I mean, he, Gordon Hayward, and Joe Ingles are all pretty close together in terms of their abilities as passers. I guess you could make a rationale for any of them. Nicholas Batum, his percentages dipped this season because he loves taking weird, like 15-foot leaning jump shots at the elbow. But he's still a legit passer at over 5 a game. And hopefully that shooting can come back because for a while he was one of my favorite players in the NBA for his versatility. The Miami Heat have themselves quite a few good passers. Tyler Johnson, James Johnson. I'm going to go with Dragic. He was the leader of their offense as they were significantly under 500 and they turned it around and then some. Unfortunately, they just missed out of the postseason. Dennis Schroeder. He's an interesting point guard because I think he has quite a ways to go with his overall awareness and at times over dribbling, and you could give this to Paul Millsap, but I am still going to give it to the starting point guard of this team. And the Memphis Grizzlies may be the toughest one of all these. I'm going to go with Marc Gasol because his passing out of the low post is just so damn effective. But Mike Conley is a very valid choice for them as well. He averages more assists than Gasol, but he also has the ball in his hands more often, given that he's the guy bringing it up court. We're going to go with Al Horford of the Boston Celtics. 5 assists a game for a big dude. That's very impressive. Similar to Marc Gasol, they use him in the low post and then they have action off of that. But he's also a fantastic passer out of the pick and roll. Kind of like a Draymond Green light offensively. Horford has been this season for the Celtics. This one is probably going to surprise you, but Chris Paul of the Los Angeles Clippers. Unfortunately, the Clips lost out because of a Blake Griffin injury. I'm sure CP3 will be back in LA next season. LeBron James leads the Cavaliers offense and leads them in ways that very few players in the history of the NBA have been able to, as I'm sure they'll go through the Toronto Raptors in a few games here and get to yet again another conference finals. Rajon Rondo, gotta give him credit, he actually showed up and then some for the first couple of games against the Celtics, and if he doesn't get injured, who knows what happens in that series. I wonder where his next stop will be in the NBA. Maybe he'll stay in Chicago. Giannis Antetokounmpo got up to around 5.5 assists a game this season. I expect that to take another leap next year, and I mean, he could be one of the better point forwards we've ever seen. And then finally, TJ McConnell, a guy who, over the last 3 months or so for the Sixers, averaged right around or even a little bit above 7 assists a game. I don't know what his fit's going to be once Ben Simmons comes back. He might have to develop that 3-point shot, but he'll definitely have a place in the NBA for a while.